There we go. Rough morning. Just trying to get us set up here. Okay, there we go. Certain words I can't have up there, so that's why I'm cautious to have it up there. But it's all good. Let's see. Yeah, we're good. We're good. We're good. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for supporting the channel. Like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks for tuning in to Let's Talk About It Media 21. We're gonna do a recap review of the week, or just basically uh yesterday and what the news is talking about for today. I hope everyone's doing well. Support the channel by liking. Super chats are welcome. Be kind in the comments. It's important because I wouldn't go onto your show and be rude. So be kind in the comments. We're going to get to the disclaimer. Let me make sure I'm good on this side. Good morning. Good morning. Yes, I'm live this morning. I didn't go live last week. I can kind of see the difference in my numbers slightly, but you guys know I had a busy family weekend last week. Hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on, hold on. Dang on. Okay, there we go. Yeah, I had a busy week last week. There was no way. And it was extremely hot, so I was over it. But we're going to get to a few things. Copyright disclaimer under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976. Allowances made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships and research. Fair use is used permitted by a copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged, in our opinion, and for entertainment purposes only. Okay, so there's that. Let me see if I can fix this. But yeah, come on in, you guys. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the show. Maybe I can move this back a little bit. Okay, that's better. And I'm cool with that being that way. So, yeah, I normally have something in the background kind of flashing, doing what it do, but I didn't want to spend another 15 minutes looking for something either. So we're going to just go this route, show a picture of him, and that's where we're at with it. There we go. Yay. Okay. There we go. Okay. All right, everyone. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the show. We're going to get to what the news is basically talking about. Thank you for being patient with me. I like things a certain way. I've always been that way. So just thanks for being patient with me. But yeah, there's certain words we have to be very, very, very cautious of showing. So yeah. Okay. Um, as you know, different attorneys are getting up and they're making statements in regards to what's happening in regards to the trial. And as we know, the attorneys are kind of going back and forth and they're trying to almost make it seem like what's happening is something that's kind of normal. And people are kind of disgusted by it. Oh, well, we saw what happened in the video. And oh, this is something that couples do. No, couples don't grab. Couples don't want you to watch your partner, in certain situations. I don't know why, he thinks that this is okay to, you know what I'm saying? And then to make comments, oh, I'm going to release it. No, he's not free. Like I said many times, he's innocent till proven guilty in a court of law. Good morning, good morning. Yes, they're coming in. They're coming in. He's innocent till proven guilty in a court of law. They're going to they were doing their closing statements, and then everybody feels that maybe Tuesday, Wednesday is going to be very busy days. Will it carry over to Monday, Tuesday? Sorry, Monday, Tuesday is going to be very busy days. Will it carry over to Wednesday? We're not certain. Like I said, he's innocent till proven guilty in a court of law. A judge jury is going to have to decide if there's any wrongdoing, period. But we're going to get to some clips in regards to what happened. But many people are making comments about the jurors. The jurors seem very interested when a certain attorney is speaking. The jurors don't really seem interested when another attorney is speaking. So it's very interesting on what's happening in the courtroom. This is the other thing that I learned. Allegedly, there was a person that was coughing, and Diddy decided to allegedly, I don't know, never mind. I'm not going to go there. They're kind of a reliable source, though. I'm just not going to go there. But there's certain things that's happening in the courtroom. And I normally like to get 3 sources before I say something, but courtroom's very interesting. He's definitely not looking at people like he was, because he don't want to get in trouble for that. Not towards the end. You don't want to get in trouble for that. But yeah, everyone's saying there's just a lot going on. Long days. A few days ago, it seems like the jury was extremely tired. Now that they're doing their closing statements, they seem more alert. Some of the jurors seem really smiley when certain people are named, and then if certain other people are named, they're not smiling. So it's just showing, it's almost like entertainment. Ooh, it's like entertainment of, the jury's really liking, certain people, and in regards to the attorney speaking, which is kind of interesting, because it's kind of like you're almost showing your cards if that attorney is kind of giving you, what you want to hear. But then if other people are speaking, you seem less interested. Go over to my short. You'll understand it when you go to the short. You'll see it. Okay, so there's that. Let's do that. Yeah, there's certain words we have to be careful of showing, period. Certain words. Okay, that's better. So thanks for being here, everyone. Thanks for supporting this channel. Like, comment, and subscribe. We're going to get to some clips of what happened yesterday. And what do you think is going to happen? Do you think he'll be found guilty, not guilty? You let me know.
Combs' sex trafficking and racketeering trial, with the defense team driving home its central argument that Sean Combs most certainly committed some crimes, just not the ones he's been charged with. The defense summation lasted just over 4 hours. Combs' attorney, Mark Agnifilo, struck a sarcastic and at times mocking tone, suggesting the trial was a farce. He acknowledged Combs' physical abuse against Cassie Ventura, the mogul's former girlfriend and a key government witness, but he reiterated that Combs is charged with sex trafficking and racketeering, not with domestic violence. Agnifilo went even further. He described the couple's relationship as a, quote, great modern love story. As for that infamous 2016 video you're looking at right now, showing Combs violently beating Ventura in a hotel lobby, Agnifilo suggested it was merely an argument over Combs' cell phone, not because Cassie Ventura was trying to escape one of his infamous freak-off parties. He said Ventura was actually the winner in this whole ordeal, saying she was, quote, sitting somewhere with $30 million, a reference to her settlements from Sean Combs and the hotel where that video was shot.
Okay, I'm finally situated. Like the videos, you guys come in. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here. Thanks for supporting the channel. Press 3 if you knew where you're watching from. Press 3 if you know where you're watching from. Press 5 you've been here before and where you're watching from. Thanks for tuning in.
That comment got a scathing response and rebuttals from the prosecutors, insisting that Ventura was no winner, but rather beaten black and blue in the incident, adding the fight was not about a cell phone. The jury is now set to figure all this out. They're going to be charged on Monday morning, get the jury instructions from the judge, and then they will begin deliberating right away. If Sean Combs is convicted on all of these charges, he could be put away for life. Joining us to break it all down is Jesse Weber, News Nation legal contributor and Law and Crime Network host, and Robert Hirschhorn, lawyer and trial.
Law Crimes has been doing amazing. Law Crimes, Jesse's been doing amazing. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
And jury consultant. Great to have both of you with us. I nearly spit out my coffee when I heard that the defense attorneys called it was a great modern love story between Cassie Ventura and Sean Combs after listening to her sworn testimony.
Well, that's a nightmare if that's the great modern love story. Look, there are people who will say he minimized too much. He minimized everything that was going on. It was had an explanation for all of the underlying crimes as part of racketeering. I will tell you there were some wins here. Now, what do I mean by that? I think he made a really good point by saying this case is about the text messages, and you and I have talked before. The text messages of Cassie, the text messages of Jane, the text messages of Mia, they're problematic. It doesn't make it a clear-cut case when they're praising Sean Combs or loving Sean Combs or setting up these sexual events where he said today, let me get this straight. So some events are consensual, and then all of a sudden it goes up 100 to sex trafficking. That's a big jump. Problem is, what happened in rebuttal? Rebuttal, the prosecution said, so you want us to believe, the defense wants you to believe that Cassie wanted to be urinated on, that these women wanted to be beaten and then have to engage in these sexual events. They wanted to have UTIs and to keep doing this. And by the way, you mentioned it before, Cassie settled her lawsuit. Mia settled in mediation. What is their incentive to testify and put their character and potentially risk perjury now? What is their goal in testifying in a case? And I have to say, since they have the prosecution, that's the last thing the jury heard. You wonder if that's what they're going to be resonating with.
You thought it was powerful. Robert, you think Sean Combs is a despicable guy, but he's not guilty. Why?
I think the government's overcharged him. Elizabeth, by the way, thanks for having me back. I mean, look, the things he did were outrageous, but his conduct is freako conduct. It's not RICO conduct. His conduct in terms of the trafficking, he's just a swinger. He's not a trafficker. Here's the point. Do we really want the government?
But if they're traveling, I think that's what makes it different. They're traveling and he's paying for it. I don't think people that swing, they pay for it, right? Can't we look at it differently in regards to that? Swinging, couples to couples, swapping. But if you're paying for, there's a difference there. And if you're traveling them out, there's the difference. Good morning, everyone. Thanks for being here. Yes, I'm here on a Saturday morning. Thanks for being here. Support the channel. There's memberships over there. Send in the super chat. If you want to donate to the channel, that'll be great. Don't forget to subscribe. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think he'll be found guilty, not guilty? Do you think he'll walk and spend the 4th of July with his family? And like I said before, he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. The judge, jury is going to have to decide if there's any wrongdoing. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Coming in, the United States government coming into our bedrooms, into our relationships. I don't think any of us want that. Do I think he's guilty of a lot of things? Absolutely, but not RICO, not the sex trafficking. They overcharged him.
You know, you have been, that was something you said at the beginning of this trial, Jesse. You don't feel as sure any longer that
Here's what I think. He's facing 5 charges. 95% he gets convicted on the transportation to engage in prostitution charges. I think that is a slam dunk. I'm 60-40 on racketeering. Why? While the prosecution has done a great job at establishing and checking off the boxes with a number of the underlying crimes the prosecution needs to prove too, what Agnifilo did...
We had a whole host of employees and assistants who said, I went and bought his drugs for him.
Sure.
I went and covered the hotel room in sheets and towels and stocked it with crates of baby oil for him. I went and hid Cassie in a hotel after you beat her up so that she could recover from the black and blue marks. I didn't know what was going on in those behind closed doors.
And they said Christina Quorum, his chief of staff, saw all the text messages. It's impossible they didn't know what was going on. Having said that, what Agnifilo did do well today goes, where is the criminal enterprise? Not one person testified they were part of a criminal enterprise.
Right.
For racketeering conspiracy, while you don't need an agreement, there does need to be a sense everybody on the same page. Was it established based on the testimony? Was it established based on the text messages? Maybe, but that may be something that hangs up the jury. And with sex trafficking, it all comes whether or not they're willing participants in all of this.
Robert, do you think it was a mistake for the defense to have literally no case, that after all these weeks of listening to the prosecution's case, the defense didn't call a
Good
single
morning. Good morning.
Yeah, I do from a jury perspective, I do, because the jury, they're human beings. They want to hear from both sides, even though the judge tells them the defendant doesn't have a burden of proof. I think part of that decision the defense made was based on the appellate issues. You don't want to give the appellate court a reason to not reverse a conviction because you got up and put on testimony that obviously wasn't believed. But look, here's the thing, Elizabeth and Jesse. The prosecutor, the assistant United States attorney, in her rebuttal said something that was fascinating that I think the jury's going to take with them this weekend.
Good morning. Good morning.
Inexcusable behavior. Guess what? It was. But when a person's a rapist, do you call that inexcusable? When a person is a mafia boss, do you call his conduct inexcusable? A drug dealer? No. It's criminal conduct, not inexcusable. Inexcusable conduct, I think, is the kind that jurors could very well decide not guilty based on this evidence.
Do you agree?
I think she did a great job of establishing without whatever language she actually used. At the end of the day, what escalates this beyond domestic violence is the sex workers. What escalates it is the violence. What escalates it is the drugs. What escalates it is the use of staff and bodyguards. And whether the defense wants to say, oh, he didn't pay $100,000 to take that tape of Cassie Ventura because he didn't want his private information. Is the jury going to believe that, or going to think he didn't want to get arrested? He was trying to cover up a crime. I have no idea what this jury's thinking. I will tell you this much. I think they're going to deliberate for quite some time on a case like this.
How long do you think it's going to be?
I know the holiday weekend, they want to get out of there, but I think they're going to take, like, literally to the last minute. They have to. This is a
They're not going to go over the 4th of July holiday.
Unlikely, but you never know. This is, I mean, so
You
much
never
information,
know.
so many elements, complicated charges, a lot of evidence. They may.
Robert, how many days?
I think I agree with Jesse. It's going to be a lengthy deliberation. It wouldn't surprise me if there's at least 1 or 2 jurors that say, I'm sorry, I don't think this evidence rises to these particular offenses. I don't think they're going to go past 4th of July. I think if you get a couple of jurors that really hold their ground, the judge may very well be declaring a mistrial.
Oh boy. Oh boy. All right, Jesse Weber, Robert Hirschhorn, thank you both so much.
And Jesse is on Law Crimes. He's been doing an amazing job. Fair use reaction clip. Please like the videos, you guys come in. Please continue to hit the like. Please continue to hit the like button. That lets everyone know we're live, and it is a great way to interact with the channel. Okay, what do you guys think? How do you think when you guys hear in regards to the different attorneys, them actually supporting, you know, what he's done, and they're trying to spin it to make it seem like he's this great guy, and that's what couples do. They argue, they have concerns. Okay, well, the employees were setting things up in the rooms. What? They're trying to make it seem, they're trying to normalize what he does, which is, yeah.
Another important day in the Sean Combs criminal trial, attorney Mark Agnifilo. Now remember, this comes after the prosecution delivered their
fair use reaction clip. Let's continue with what's being happening in the courtroom Friday, and then just general conversation from Saturday. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
closing argument yesterday. Prosecutor Christy Slavic, she highlighted how Combs operated a criminal enterprise, that the assistants, the bodyguards, they facilitated the crimes, they covered them up, they knew what was going on. She methodically went through each and every one of the underlying predicate crimes for racketeering conspiracy. They have to prove at least 2: bribery, arson, kidnapping, drug offenses, forced labor. Again, you only need 2. And there was the sex trafficking of Jane and Cassie. It was a very strong moment yesterday to say,
good morning.
Look, not every sexual incident is sex trafficking. Just because a victim may consent 1 time or 2 times, that doesn't mean they consent all the time. You just need 1 instance of sex trafficking for Sean Combs to be found guilty of it. And they provided, and Slavic provided multiple concrete, specific examples with respect to each victim that the jury can choose from. Transportation to engage in prostitution, literally transporting men and these alleged victims for the purposes of sex work, through the credit card statements, travel records, text messages, voice notes. The argument was they directly tied Combs to paying and arranging the transport of the victims and men for the purposes of sex work. So, what did the defense say in response today? By the way, we also heard from the prosecution in their rebuttal closing too. Very short, but arguably impactful as well. Okay, so for that and more, let me bring in once again Law and Crimes in-court reporter Elizabeth Milner, who was inside that courtroom for all of the closing arguments from both, again, Mark Agnifilo, the defense attorney, and we also heard from Maureen Comey, the main prosecutor in this case, delivering the rebuttal. We'll get to that in a minute. Elizabeth, great to see you.
Elizabeth has been doing great in the courtroom. Like the video, like the video. There's about 143 in the building. Can I please get the likes to 100? Please double tap the screen. If you're watching from a phone, just double tap the screen, please. Thank you. Thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Hit the like. Double tap the screen. Thank you.
About Mark Agnifilo. So how did he start off, right? It seems like he started off basically by saying, this is not what the prosecution wants you to believe, right?
Thank you.
There's no sex trafficking here. And it seemed like he really focused on the idea of text messages as evidence and really said this wasn't a federal crime, took aim at both Cassie and Jane. What were some of the opening remarks that stood out to you about this?
Yeah, well, a lot of parts of this closing argument really stood out to me, specifically the way that Mark Agnifilo's tone was to the jury and pretty much their final message to the jury before they eventually go and deliberate, which it looks like that will now start on Monday. But in terms of just him approaching the jury, he was very personable, really kind of pulling out that Mark Agnifilo charm. Like literally one of the first lines he said in his closing argument was, this is a tale of 2 trials. The first trial is about witnesses and videos and texts and evidence. He said the second trial was just kind of the word of mouth by the prosecutors. He was saying that this case is badly exaggerated. He says it's made up, in other words. He also said it's about personal use of drugs, nothing else. The evidence shows that it was kind of a swinger type of lifestyle that, you know, as far as the hotel nights and freak-offs occurred, or as Jane and Cassie had testified about the hotel nights and freak-offs, that these were just threesomes. It was just swingers. It was just an alternative lifestyle, those types of things. And then he was saying that the evidence shows that Sean Combs is a self-made, successful Black entrepreneur. He's done something that's hard to do, and that's have wonderful, successful, legitimate businesses. He says how many government witnesses said that they were moved by Sean Combs, that being with him was like drinking from a fire hose. He taught me great work work ethic. And he admitted, he was like, did they always like him? Did the assistants always like him? Did his staff always like him? No way. That wasn't always the case, but they loved him. And then they kind of brought it back to Mia a little bit, where Mia had implied that she felt like she wanted to self-harm, mainly because she had lost her position over at Combs Enterprises, which is not to be confused with the criminal enterprise that the government is alleging. But in terms of just everything, including Derek Ferguson, who had all...
Like I said before, he's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Judge, jury's going to have to decide if there's any wrongdoing. Do you think that he's going to be found guilty or not guilty? Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Also testified. He was the former chief financial officer over at Bad Boy. He was kind of saying things like he's a handsome black man, and the reason that he wanted to work at Bad Boy was because he being Sean Combs, was giving people who look like him opportunities that people of color may have not gotten elsewhere. And so even he made kind of one line that I thought was interesting, where he said diversity, equity, and inclusion. He was doing that. He, again, being Sean Combs, was doing that in his early 20s, as early as 24 years old. And he says that the government says his businesses are racketeering, but then the defense pointed out that none of the witnesses says that they were a part of a racketeering enterprise. None of the witnesses got on the stand and said, yes, I'm a part of this racketeering conspiracy. He said none of that. And so it really was a pretty strong opening just in the first few lines, first few minutes of the defense's closing argument.
So look, I know our content can be a lot at times. Sometimes that you can... All right, here's how you're going to use a home...
Fair use reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in, please. Like the video as you guys come in. I'm going to cover the against thing, because I don't think people are really against. We just want to be fair over here. He needs to have a fair trial, so I'm gonna just go ahead and cover that up. Well, yeah, I think that everybody needs and deserves a fair trial, so we'll cover that up. Okay, like the video as you guys come in, like the video as you guys come in, because he does still have supporters, which is fine. People should have supporters. Fair use reaction clip. Like the video as you guys come in, like it. Hold on one second. Oh, that's him actually doing it. Okay, there we go. I was wondering.
Everyone needs a KK because she's...
Will he be charged? Will he walk? Will things end before the 4th of July? Fair use reaction clip.
The right-hand woman to Sean Combs. And
good morning.
God for her, but not in a criminal type of way. And so the defense also pointed out a specific incident involving Carrie Morgan and Cassie Ventura, where Diddy had brought allegedly a hammer over to Cassie's apartment. And so the defense was pointing out that instead of calling the police or anything like that, that Carrie Morgan and Cassie Ventura, now fine, they reached out to Christina Quorum. They reached out to D-Rock. And then Mark Agnifilo says, did anyone say that KK or D-Rock was a co-conspirator? The government makes it sinister that he has personal security because obviously he's a high-powered celebrity. Of course, he's going to be one to have a security personnel as staff at his kind of beck and call when needed because he's a high-profile figure. They even, at points, Mark Agnifilo was saying, okay, does Beyonce go to CBS? No, she sends her assistants to go to CBS on her behalf. And so Mark Agnifilo was kind of pointing out that Sean Combs wasn't charged with firearms. He wasn't charged with anything to do with Don Richard. He wasn't charged with the incident with Carrie Morgan with the wooden hanger. He wasn't charged standalone about Cassie's violence and the assault. So Mark Agnifilo was really kind of pointing out in terms of just the security aspect when Cassie was testifying about how she had to hold firearms for Diddy in her purse. Mark Agnifilo said, okay, it was because security gave her the weapons. That's why. And again, kind of pointing to the fact that security is doing what security does for a high-profile individual. That is carry weapons, carry firearms, pointing out that it was legal for them to be carrying these firearms. And even in terms of just Cassie Ventura and the whole Daniel Phillip aspect, and I know we're going to talk more about kind of the sex trafficking part a little towards the end, it's just that Mark Agnifilo kind of pointed out here that Cassie had asked Daniel Phillip to urinate on her. And one of these towards the end, as he was really kind of getting his final message out to the jury, he says, okay, at what point do you stop trusting the government? He says the government targeted Sean Combs.
And everyone understands that. The jury decides. We understand that. Fair use reaction clip.
Because of Cassie's lawsuit. He says that's what makes this different from any other case, especially ones that he has defended, where he says, okay, today you being the jury, are the United States of America. I'm asking you to acquit Sean Combs on all counts and return him to his family who's been waiting for him. And that was his final message, the defense's final message to the jury before, and of course we're going to talk about
the judge is going to make sure their thoughts are clear.
Final message, that's what Mark Agnifilo had to say to those jurors.
Yeah, I know we went a little backwards because I wanted to go to the racketeer because it is the top charge and that's how he ended it. I think it was smart. The last thing the jury hears is about why this is allegedly not racketeering. And I also know that Mark Agnifilo got in trouble because the prosecution called him out for this. They said, he's not allowed to say we targeted Sean Combs. The judge took issue with that, thought that was totally improper, gave a curative instruction to the jury about that as well to basically disregard that comment. You mentioned sex trafficking. Let's go back to it. Why did he argue, how did he argue that what happened to Jane, or what allegedly happened to Jane, what allegedly happened to Cassie Ventura, why is this not sex trafficking? Because I think one thing that, really
stood out to me is emphasizing consent and emphasizing they're willing participants. But didn't he said something to the effect of, so we're saying this is consensual, this is consensual, this is consensual. Then all of a sudden, not only is this not consensual, this jumps to sex trafficking. That's a wild jump to make. Why was he saying that sex trafficking is not the appropriate charge for Sean Combs when it comes to Cassie or Jane?
Well, I think the main point that the defense was really trying to kind of put in the jury's head is that Sean Combs had no idea that Cassie nor Jane really didn't want to be doing these freak-offs or wild king nights, hotel nights, whatever you want to call them. But he was saying, to your point, Jesse, that this isn't sex trafficking.
He knew they didn't want to do it. Them. Remember how recently they told us that one of the women had said, I don't want to do it. And he was like, oh, okay, that's cool. You don't have to. But then he made calls to somebody to set it up. So even though they were saying no at times, he was still trying to set them up because he wanted his needs met. Real talk, fair use reaction clip.
Because they initially consented. Now, the government kind of bounced back a little bit from that, but in terms of just people kind of understanding sex trafficking as a whole, the government was making it clear that it only takes one instance for him to be found guilty, whereas Mark Agnifilo was like, okay, well, where's the line drawn? If they're doing 75 different freak-offs and 76 is a little different from the first 75, is that make him guilty of sex trafficking? And that was really kind of the message that he was sending to the jury. But in terms of just counts 2 and 4, specifically related to Cassie and Jane, and when it comes to Cassie specifically, Mark Agnifilo was like, okay, I suppose you can sex traffic your girlfriend if you sell her into prostitution. They're swingers. This is a lifestyle. Again, kind of that was a common theme throughout his closing, was that this was just an alternative lifestyle, that these were just swingers, and these were just people who were engaging in threesomes, that they were adults, that they were making these choices. And he kind of said something interesting where he was like, okay, well, if your partner likes anal, but you don't, it was kind of really like an oh my god moment a little bit, because I saw some people in the gallery kind of just be like, what did he just say? But in terms of just Mark Agnifilo kind of painting this as consensual, he was saying that this is what people do who are in love. They do things that maybe they don't necessarily want to do, but they do it because they love their partner, and that doesn't amount to sex trafficking.
Remember how there was a time when he had said, oh, let's do something, let's have fun, and then the person had pulled up and they saw the red lights? They knew what was going to happen that night. And if a person is saying, no, I don't want to do it, but then he's still making calls to set it up and have people flown there or drive there or whatever, she had said no, and then he was still setting it up. That's happened. So that's in itself is concerning. Fair use reaction clip.
So when it comes to Cassie, he was saying things like your likes and their likes become one, and Cassie wasn't necessarily clutching her pearls at the ideas of doing freak-offs. And then the defense pointed out those 3 instances that the government alleged were clear instances of sex trafficking. That was what had happened at Cannes Film Festival, something that had happened with Daniel Phillip in 2012 after a freak-off where Cassie Ventura was beaten and then was forced, according to the government, to still do a freak-off. And then they point to the Intercontinental Hotel incident. But one thing that was interesting, Jesse, is that they played the Intercontinental Hotel video during the defense's closing argument, and Mark Agnifilo really kind of took it piece by piece. But I think most notably, he skipped the part where Sean Combs is seen on that surveillance video dragging, beating, kicking Cassie Ventura when she was on the ground. And so, in the defense's argument, they were saying that this whole thing was just domestic violence, that this is not sex trafficking. And the defense used one of Cassie's own Instagram posts against her, specifically the one after this CNN surveillance videotape, which we now know to be kind of a snippet of what had happened in 2016 at the Intercontinental Hotel, where Cassie made this post after kind of seeing this amount of support, where she was saying, you know, domestic violence is the issue. Mark Agnifilo kind of pointed it out to be like, okay, she not once said sex trafficking was the issue. None of that. And so it was one of those things where it seemed like the defense was kind of using the alleged victim's words against her. And so then there were other points. So when it came to sex trafficking as it pertains to Jane, Mark Agnifilo says that it's a little bit different than Cassie Ventura Fine, where that Jane had liked all the trappings, that she was more focused on what she was getting out of it that the world could actually see. So seeing the things of them being on social media, those types of things. But then they kind of point to the sex trafficking instances that the government pointed out. So one example was September 2023, where the government claimed that this was an instance of sex trafficking, and that the defense showed the jury text messages from this time frame, that being September 18th of 2023, where Jane had liked a text with a link for Cowboys for Angels. The defense says Jane often didn't like the entertainers, and that she was able to kind of send them packing. So they bring out one text message from Jane that we could see in an exhibit, where Jane was saying, okay, this is the paymo sent on Venmo for their bum a cowboy, because this cowboy couldn't necessarily perform, or she wasn't attracted to him, something to that effect. And so
I agree. I do not think that's the first time, and we've heard that there's been other times. I'm surprised with all of that. She was like, no, security, I'm not coming back. Family, protect me. Let's go on a vacation somewhere. Let him forget about me. I do not think that that was the first time he laid hands like that. That's sad that it happened, but we saw that she was trying to leave. And then say, for instance, he said that Cassie might have had his phone. Well, he could have put his hand out and say, give me my phone. Give me my phone. You did not have to grab her like that. You did not have to touch her like that. You didn't have to grab her hoodie trying to drag her back into that room. I agree. I don't think that was the first time. I think that was the first time of many times that it was caught on camera. And look how much he paid to get it away from the hotel. He paid so much money because he didn't want to do that. Now, mind you, he's also making comments to Cassie's family like, I'm going to put it out. I'm going to show everybody what she be doing. That ain't love. That ain't respect. And he did it allegedly to the other women. I'm going to put out your video because remember, it's them interacting with these men. And that was the other thing we talked about. It's your girls with men, but it's not girls on girls. And remember how yesterday it said, Cassie had said, well, what about a girl? He was like, well, why would you want to do that? He wanted to play in the sloppy seconds. Weird. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
The defense says that this a cowboy was still paid, and then they brought up the they brought up the sobriety party in October of 2023, where the defense says that Jane was upset about Gina, but she still agreed to do this hotel night. And Mark Agnifilo said people do things because she wanted to do things at the time. Maybe she just regrets it. She agreed to it, and that's pretty much it. And so, even in terms of Jane getting her rent paid and those types of things, Mark Agnifilo again.
I couldn't believe these.
So then he pulled, you know, it's almost like I got you in this situation. I got something on you. And at any time I can release it.
He's animated throughout his cross-examination, but at this point, he was saying that Jane previously had a crappy lawyer. Those were literally the words that he had used when it comes to her child support, and that Sean Combs was just doing a nice thing, helping take care of another man's child.
That was a dig. Talking about Jane and her child support, that was not okay. I don't know if y'all heard about that. Jane, he talked about Jane and her child support. Allegedly, Jane's man is pretty famous. We're not going to, out Jane or Mia. If they presented their names, they presented their names. But for some odd reason, it's interesting that they want to talk about Jane's baby father, which is interesting, and talking about the child support. Well, allegedly, Diddy was still paying Jane's rent. He was still paying Jane's rent, even when he's been locked up. Now, I don't know if he's paying it now, but everybody was shocked that he was still paying her rent.
Providing that child, and then of course the child's mother with a nice home, the home that he's still paying for even to this day, even while he's still being incarcerated, and that's about $10,000 a month just on rent alone. And so Mark Agnifilo says that Jane and Sean Combs were kind of into the porn scene, and how Jane even brought escorts herself, or found these escorts herself, specifically naming Cabral and Antoine. And so in kind of the last instance that they were talking about was what had happened June 18th, 19th of just last year. And so Mark Agnifilo said nothing happens this night. They've never been physical before. She slammed his head into the counter. Why did she do this? Without any reasonable explanation at all. The defense saying, why is she calling him that word? And that word being a pedophile, because Sean Combs was dating a 21-year-old. And so the defense was saying that Jane was just trying to get a rise out of him, and that they were pointing out that Jane changed into a dress as opposed to sweats when she was trying to get away, and that Mark Agnifilo claims she wasn't hiding behind a wall for 2 hours. That there's no way that this could have happened. But Agnifilo admits that there was some kind of physical contact that night. He did admit that. He did say that Jane did have visible injuries to her face, something that the jury could see, because unfortunately this was a particular exhibit that we couldn't see. But he says that nothing about this night makes any type of sense. So really kind of putting that reasonable doubt in those jurors' minds, just as it pertains to count 2 and count 4, again, those being sex trafficking in relation to alleged victim 1, that being Cassie Ventura Fine, and alleged victim 2, that of course being Jane Doe.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting when he was like, Cassie even called it domestic violence. She didn't call it sex trafficking, that this was all about love. If domestic violence was a charge here, he would have pled guilty to it, that this is all about money. They didn't call 911. They got civil lawyers. I think it was really interesting when he highlighted how Cassie left. Eventually, she left the relationship. She could have always left. What happened to her? Nothing happened to her. Real quick, before we move on to transportation to engage in prostitution, he did spend a little time talking about the underlying predicate crimes of racketeering and the other alleged victims in this case, whether it's Kid Cudi, Mia, Capricorn Clark. Basically said that testimony doesn't support the charges. Real quick, what did he say about those 3 individuals and those underlying predicate crimes, right? Arson, kidnapping, forced labor.
can. So in terms of Kid Cudi, the defense is saying that Cassie played Kid Cudi as something that he being Kid Cudi, had even testified to. Mark Agnifilo said the government wants you to believe that she was so scared to death of Sean Combs, but she wasn't afraid of him. Mark Agnifilo claims that Cassie was lying to both Sean Combs and to Kid Cudi because Cassie was trying to keep it gangsta, that she had 2 hotel rooms when Sean Combs had found out that she was seeing Kid Cudi. One was a pre-op that they were engaged in around that time frame, but also another hotel room where she had kept this burner phone, and that the burner phone was the reason that she had all these secrets and all of that stuff. And so in terms of just Kid Cudi, the defense really kind of pointing out about the glove that the fire investigator didn't talk about. When
I think Cassie was seeking different men to get out of a bad situation that she was in. And she was trying to check the temperature, saying, I'm in a bad situation. I need to try and find me another dude. And when he found out that she was seeking love and support from somebody else, he flipped out.
they showed all those photos to the jury, they were even talking about the female partial DNA that was found. They have to kind of really emphasize it was partial DNA. It was it kind of matched a female person, but you know the investigation really stalled.
I think they should have did better in regards to the prints, in regards to what happened to Kid Cudi. That should have never happened. The prints he had to release to the police, they were missing. Why is that? Why isn't the police getting proper prints? Real talk.
In 2011, nothing really happened. No charges came about from that particular moment. And in terms of Capricorn Clark, the defense spent a lot of time talking about Capricorn Clark, where they had talked about the 2004 alleged kidnapping of her, where she was taken to an abandoned building that was going to eventually be turned into one of the bad boy offices, and that she was, the government alleges, and Capricorn Clark testified to this too, that she was forced to take these lie detector tests day after day after day after day. And they, the defense says that it wasn't kidnapping because she was able to go home every single day. That the Capricorn Clark testified that she kept doing it because she wanted to get her job back. And the defense asked the jury at this moment, do you guys feel kidnapped being here inside this courtroom? Because y'all get to go home every day. So again, kind of making it seem a little personal to the jury at some point, but also kind of making it seem like Capricorn Clark, this didn't happen. She wasn't kidnapped because she had the free will to go home every single day. And at any point she could have stopped. But in terms of just the 2011 kidnapping of Capricorn Clark, the defense kind of talked about Capricorn Clark and that she was super platonic friends with Sean Combs, and that they were kind of sprinkling in that Capricorn Clark might have had a crush on Sean Combs. And then even Mark Agnifilo at one point says, okay, well, she's, you know, somewhat of a little off kilter, but really kind of saying that Capricorn Clark attested Sean.
Stop using ChatGPT for prompts.
Fair use, reaction clip, fair use. Like the videos, you guys come in. Like the videos, you guys come in. Please don't forget to subscribe, and thank you.
Texted Sean Combs that we misused our dope chemistry, but really the defense's main point of this particular argument was kind of just that there was no type of way that Sean Combs had a gun on his person at this time, because why would he have a gun? That was one of the reasons that this might not have even happened. The defense also pointing out that Cassie was the one that gave Sean Combs Kid Cudi's address, and that Sean Combs had everything to lose, so why would he point a gun at one of his staff members and allegedly kidnap her? He also pointed out that Capricorn Clark wouldn't have stayed employed if a gun was actually pulled on her, and that Kid Cudi and Cassie said that Capricorn never said that Sean Combs had a gun. So really kind of planting those seeds of doubt into the jury's mind about whether or not was the gun there, was it not? But I also think the main thing is, like, do you believe the witnesses? Do you believe what they have to say? Are they all just kind of making this up, or do they all not remember those types of things? And so even in terms of just Mia, really kind of when it falls to RICO and just the underlying predicate acts, they really were talking about the alleged witness tampering, where Mark Agnifilo was saying that the government didn't tell the jury that Mia had sent a message saying that she was out of Skrilla meaning money, and that's why D-Rock had messaged her around that time frame, saying that if you need anything, I might be able to help you. Because, and it's interesting, Jesse, they said that specific line about Mia saying that she was out of Skrilla because Alexander Shapiro also used that particular line when they were doing that motion for judgment of acquittal. And so, you know, we were talking about it before on Sidebar a couple days ago. We were like, okay, this might be a preview of what we can expect for the closing argument. And given that those two lines pretty much were exactly the same, it really did feel like, okay, the defense really wanted to make sure that the jury had the full context of why D-Rock might have been reaching out to her.
Yeah, and look, I think there's room for reasonable doubt there. I really do. Now, some might say, is he minimizing too much of this and trying to explain too much of this? Even saying things like, oh, it wasn't, you know, bribery, he wasn't trying to tamper with a witness, he was just trying to protect himself, you know, for the underlying crimes. I get it. I don't know where exactly he went with transportation to engage in prostitution. What was the defense to that?
So, Jesse, I really didn't know where the defense was really kind of going to go in that particular argument as it pertains to count 3 and count 5, that being transportation to engage in prostitution. But Mark Agnifilo mentioned that the government...
Let's be very clear. How he treated his employees, concerning. How he treated his girls, concerning. You should not have to be in a warehouse on a lie detector for several days. No employee should be expected to be up for days with hardly no sleep. Do most of us have a job? Is your boss acting like this? Having you go to a warehouse for a lie detector? Your boss asking you to carry anything? There are huge HR and union concerns, and his team is trying to make it normalized of how he acts. It's concerning. Real talk. Fair use reaction clip.
Called two of the
You can't treat people like that, period.
Sean Combs was with Cassie
That's
over
weird.
to the time that Sean Combs was with Jan, and it was a lot of escorts that were shown to the jury just yesterday.
I don't care how rich he is. He should not even be asking an employee to test a substance. That's illegal, period. You can't ask your employee to test a substance for you. No employee should even be having or carrying a substance. I don't know why. Okay, so a person on the corner get caught with some stuff. Don't they go to jail? Why are they acting like just because he is a millionaire, billionaire, whatever it is, it's okay to ask an employee to take a substance to prove their loyalty? Stop playing. A lot of us have jobs. I don't think my boss is going to ask me to test no substance. I don't think no boss is going to ask me to go take no lie detector. I don't think my man, my boo, my bae, my love is going to ask me to have relations with somebody else with no protection. Stop playing. People really need to think about what's being said. Concerns in regards to employees, concerns in regards to these women and how they were treated. And to have things over their head and asking someone's mom to give up money because the daughter wants to move on with somebody else, and you mad, you're big mad because you want the money from her parents, and the parents had to take out a loan and then control any good things that Cassie had. He wanted to control it. Any friend she had, he wanted to control it. Keep distance. He basically like, I'm the man. I'm gonna show you, basically. And why not just let her go and date somebody else in peace? And then, do you think your boss is gonna injure you and have you in a hotel locked down until you recover? Stop playing with me. I don't think, why do people think that this is an okay situation? There's text message of the concerns. Kid Cudi's prints and all that situation, I'm sure they did what they did to get it away. Just like they said, he barely gets his own coffee breakfast. Why would he throw the cocktail? His prints aren't going to be on it. His prints aren't going to be on it. This is not a normal situation. And it's sad that the attorneys are trying to normalize poor behavior, poor relationship situation, holding things over people's head. Cassie should have never been touched. That's unacceptable. Would you guys want this guy at your family event? Would you let him date your mama, your sister, your aunt, and your niece? Real talk. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Yesterday, and it was really kind of laid out in terms of just even some of the escorts overlapping between Cassie and between Jane, but the government only called two of those escorts, that being Daniel Phillips and that being Sheree Hayes, aka the Punisher. And so Mark Agnifilo says that both of these men says that it wasn't sex for money and that they weren't prostitutes, and then they did testify to that. They said that they weren't prostitutes. They said that they were just paid for their time, the experience. But Mark Agnifilo again asking, why didn't the government just call more escorts to the stand? And even saying things like, were these the two best that they could get? They didn't travel anywhere because they were always here in New York. And so the defense pointed out that Daniel Phillips says that he didn't even ask for a single dollar for spending those nights in the hotel rooms, doing those freak-offs with Sean Combs and Cassie Ventura. And even when it comes to Sheree Hayes, aka the Punisher, that Sheree Hayes testified that he goes there to set a sexy scene and that he went over there one time, got $500, and didn't even have sex with Cassie Ventura. And so Mark Agnifilo said that there's no evidence that there was negotiation of sex for money. And the defense says that the sex videos, the sexually explicit videos of the freak-offs, or in some cases with, as it comes to, or as it pertains to Jane, that this was just homemade porn, and says that adult film stars, aka porn stars, that they get paid, but they're not prostitutes. So why does that apply to the men that were used in what the defense keeps calling the private time or the personal time when it comes to Sean?
Homemade pee. What? Where they do that at? Your girl is with a situation for days. Most women's bodies can't handle stuff for days. She was numbed out on substances. Who treats their girls like that to fulfill their wants and needs? Most women can't handle days. Most women can't handle days.
Interesting. So then we come to the rebuttal closing argument from prosecutor Maureen Comey. What were some of the main themes that stood out to you? It was obviously shorter than the first closing argument, but this is the last thing.
Is your child struggling with a gaming addiction?
Fair use reaction clip. Most women can't handle days. And that's what he expected of Cassie concerning
closing argument. But this is the last thing, okay? This is the last opportunity. It's their case, and they have to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. What were some of the main highlights from the rebuttal closing from Maureen Comey, the prosecutor?
Well, I will say this, Jesse, that I think AUSA Maureen Comey was a lot more animated and a lot more, I think, direct and personal with the jury as opposed to Christy Slavic, who really kind of was just, for the most part, she was very, very methodical, a word that I've been using often describing her, the prosecution's closing argument. But with the rebuttal, Maureen Comey, she was really like, okay, this is my final message to the jury, and I really want you to know this, because she was even using her hands at that point. She was kind of saying the defense wants you to believe that this happened, and this, you know, that was kind of the tone of it. But right off the bat, Maureen Comey says the defense put a whole lot of energy, and she really was kind of exaggerating her words here, where she says they put a whole lot of energy into blaming the victims and the United States government. But the prosecution says in Sean Combs' world, he couldn't take no for an answer. And again, that was a common theme throughout the prosecution's closing argument, even for the first time and then in the rebuttal. And so Maureen Comey mentioned that the burden of proof is on the United States government and that the defense didn't have to call a single witness, but they welcomed that burden because they believe they proved their case. And so in terms of just some of the biggest highlights, they brought it back to the payment for sex, where Maureen Comey says he wasn't flying escorts all over the country just for their conversation. His money was used for sex, and that Daniel Phillip had testified that he got paid for sex and that he couldn't perform, and that when he couldn't perform, he didn't get any type of money. And so Maureen Comey said that the argument that all the escorts weren't called to testify was just a distraction, and that Comey said that Sean Combs made Cassie make sure that these men weren't cops, they weren't undercover cops, something that the jury has seen in text messages where somebody had messaged, okay, you're not a cop, right? Those types of things. And so Maureen Comey said the only reason to worry about undercover cops is because this is illegal. When it came to count one, that being racketeering conspiracy, Comey says that the uncalled witnesses were equally available to both sides, both the prosecution and both the defense. And so I think kind of tried to imply, like, okay, well, if you don't think that these people are co-conspirators, why did the defense call them? And she specifically named Christina Court and D-Rock. And so Maureen Comey says, you have an enterprise here. The law doesn't require anyone to use the words that they were in a racketeering enterprise. You don't have to come onto the stand and be like, yes, I am a criminal. Yes, I was involved in a member of the racketeering conspiracy. She says you don't need all that. She was saying this to the jury. You don't need all of that in order to...
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, good morning, good morning. Like I said, would you want to date him? Would you want your mom dating him? Would you want your daughter dating him? Would you want your niece dating him? Fair use reaction clip. Let's continue.
Prove him guilty on that specific charge. And so even in terms of just the 2011 alleged kidnapping of Capricorn Clark, Comey says that both Cassie and Kid Cudi testified that Capricorn Clark was forced to go over to Kid Cudi's home. The government says that Combs used guns with men, but used fists with women, kind of going back to the Suge Knight incident and going back to just the whole gun aspect of this case. When it came to the London hotel incident with Cassie, the government says it doesn't matter that Cassie wanted to go to Sean Combs' home. She was forced to go to that hotel, and she couldn't even leave even to see her mother. And so, again, pointing to that is proof of kidnapping. When it came to the arson of Kid Cudi's Porsche, the government says that the whole glove thing that the defense was trying to use, where they were like, okay, why isn't the jury shown these photos of the glove or anything like that? Well, the prosecution says that the glove was Kid Cudi's. That's the simplest answer to this. But they also mentioned that Cassie's testimony about Sean Combs specifically threatening to blow up Kid Cudi's car, and then, as we all know, a Molotov cocktail was lodged into that car, and we all know in 2011 what ended up happening. We've seen the photos of it. Kid Cudi had testified to it. Even in terms of just drugs, when the defense was talking about drugs, they were saying it was all for personal use, that this isn't a crime, that, again, the assistants were getting Sean Combs drugs because he might have been a drug addict, but at the same time, this isn't criminal, this isn't drug distribution. But the government said no requirement for drugs to be distributed in large quantities, because even I myself thought, okay, drug distribution means that it has to be kilos and lots of drugs, but it really could even come down to personal use drugs. And she said just giving drugs to another person, that is against the law. And she said that the defendant is guilty of racketeering conspiracy because, again, she's not talking about marijuana or anything like that. She's talking about cocaine and ecstasy and GHB, things that were pretty much essential to these hotel nights and freak-offs. And so even in terms of just the hotel nights and freak-offs, Jesse, that Maureen Comey said that Cassie testified that Sean Combs directed the escort to urinate in her mouth, and pointed out that both Cassie and Jane told Sean Combs that they didn't want to be doing these particular nights. Comey even said that there were 3 women who had no motive to lie. It was Cassie, it was Jane, and it was Mia. Cassie, because she had already gotten her settlement. Why does she need to lie? She already has her money. If anything, if she were to get on the stand and lie, that would just make her look bad. When it came to Jane didn't even file a lawsuit against Sean Combs. And when it came to Mia had already gotten her settlement years earlier. And so I think the government are really kind of bringing it all together.
Please hit the like button, you guys. We got about 26 likes. We've been live for almost 45 minutes. Can we please get the likes to 100? Please double tap the screen. I know we're listening, but you got to hit the like to support the channel, please. Thank you. It lets everyone know we're live, and it keeps us in the algorithm. Please hit the like button. Just double tap the screen. If you're watching from a phone, press 1, double tap the screen to hit the like. Thank you.
Because they had the last and final word to the jury.
Yeah, the question is, all these people are lying. Really, what is their incentive to lie, particularly if there's a lack of a financial motivation? And again, I think the idea of, so the defense is saying that Cassie wanted to be, urinated on. Jane wanted to have sex after being beaten. Mia wanted to be sexually violated. They wanted to be drenched in baby oil and having UTIs and wearing.
And then y'all remember his girlfriend that he's been dating allegedly outside of Jane Doe, what she said in an interview? Do y'all remember what one of his girlfriends said on the Jason Lee show? And then allegedly some of that got deleted. Fair use reaction clip.
I think both sides are saying, what is common sense here? The defense has a very fair argument. The prosecution has a fair argument. We'll see what the jury ultimately decides. Monday, they're coming back. Jury instructions, beginning of deliberations. We shall see. Elizabeth Milner, thank you so much.
A lot going on. This is not normal relationships, not normal situations. And I need people to stop acting like it is. How they decided to charge him, that's all on them. Should they have made comments like that and how they stated it, and then people are saying certain things are dropped? In regards to the Kid Cudi situation, they should have more proof. His prints of what he turned into the police should have never been MIA or missing. Period. They should have did a better job grabbing those prints. But why didn't they? For a reason. There's a reason why those prints are missing. There's a reason.
Rest in peace if you got blepharoplasty.
Fair use reaction clip. Thanks for tuning in, everyone. Continue to hit the like button. Thank you. Let's get the likes to 100. Thank you. Let's continue.
She chose the kind of lifestyle also that Sean Combs was into.
The defense asked the jury to see the case as a, quote, great modern love story. Can you please explain this moment to us?
It was a moment where the defense really tried to reframe everything the jury.
Like the video, press 3 if you knew where you're watching from, press 3 if you knew where you're watching from, press 5 you've been here before where you're watching from. Fair use reaction clip.
Had heard about the relationship between Cassie Ventura and Sean Combs. He urged them to read all of the text messages they sent each other. He said it would make you cry. Some of the most beautiful things he had ever seen. And he said it was true love. It was a great modern love story. Perhaps.
That's not love. Putting hands on and asking men to sleep with for hours and days, that's not love.
Whitewashing the fact that he beat her, as prosecutors later pointed out in rebuttal, throughout the years of their relationship.
Now, Combs has been in this courtroom for over a month now, Aaron. His family and friends often attending there in support. Who was there with him today?
All of the kids, they just left. As a matter of fact, his mother was there. He gestured to them on the way in, and he hugged his defense attorney, Mark Agnifilo, after he finished delivering the closing statement. This was the last chance that Combs will have to try and convince the jury to find him not guilty, and the defense asked jurors to summon the courage to acquit Sean Combs. Defense attorney Agnifilo said the government targeted him with evidence that could not support the charges.
So, Aaron, what's next in this case?
The jury is done for the weekend. They're going to be back on Monday morning. They'll hear the judge's instructions on the law and then begin deliberating the charges that could put Sean Combs in prison for life if he's convicted, something the defense was desperately trying to avoid with their arguments today.
Aaron Kaczorski for us there at the courthouse. Looks very busy behind you. Thank you so much. And now ABC News legal contributor Brian Buckmeyer is joining me to discuss the impact of these closing arguments prior to deliberation. Brian, how did the defense close their arguments here?
So it's very interesting. We started off with a quote from actually one of Cassie's posts on Instagram that's still on her Instagram page now, and talked about domestic violence is the issue, saying that this is about domestic violence, a theme that the defense has brought up from the beginning of this trial. It was not about sex trafficking, trying to reframe that Sean Combs, just like Teddy Garrido said in their opening statements, is a flawed man, an indefensible man, but the allegations in which he's being accused of are not things that he's done.
Can you tell us more about the attorney who presented today's closing argument?
Mark Agnifilo is the lead attorney in this case. You might have seen him in the Nexium case as well. He's well known throughout the Southern District of New York and in federal court cases. He did the closing arguments here. And if Agnifilo sounds familiar to you, Karen Agnifilo, his wife, representing Luigi Mangione, but we'll kind of move on from that. He gave the arguments here to end the trial.
Okay, so the federal prosecutors have argued that the video of Combs dragging Ventura is sort of the linchpin moment of this case, right? The defense had a really different spin on this today.
So, interestingly enough, even if you look at Jane Rosenberg, she is the sketch artist here writing about this. Sean Combs has a cell phone in his hand, and what the defense is arguing here is that this is about getting a cell phone, whether it be Cassie or Sean Combs is back, and then when he had the opportunity to get the phone, he took it and left, even reframing the idea that he didn't throw the vase at Cassie, instead throwing the contents of the vase, the flowers, still a bad thing, and the vase fell at his feet. And it wasn't that he was trying to drag her back to a freak off. In fact, when Israel Flores came up with the security guards, he's saying that he can see Cassie saying, get back to the room, get back to the room. Agnifilo making the argument that there was no danger back in the room, there was no freak off in the room. This is about jealousy, this is about that phone.
Okay, what did the defense attorney want these jurors to take away from everything that they heard?
So, all of the predicate acts, right? He didn't kidnap anyone. He didn't obstruct justice. He didn't bribe anyone. Each and every time, giving a piece of evidence and giving his rendition, his version.
Allegedly, he was trying to drag her somewhere. Like the video, like the video. Don't forget to subscribe, you guys. Thank you.
Of why this wasn't a racketeering conspiracy, why these were not predicate acts. Ultimately, walking through each and every charge and explaining about the lack of credibility of some of the witnesses, how they might have exaggerated or lied in the opinion of the defense, or that the elements of the crime were not made out because it just doesn't make sense that Sean Combs is not part of a criminal enterprise, but instead a self-made billionaire.
Brian, thank you so much for being with us. With closing arguments wrapped, the case will now go to the jury on Monday. What will happen inside the closed doors of that deliberation room? Here to give us some insight into the process is Eric Rudick, a senior litigation consultant. And Eric, you're not involved in this case, but you are an expert on jury behavior. Sean Combs isn't just any defendant. He's a major celebrity. So does that typically come into play with a jury?
Yes, absolutely. So regardless of the criminal case, the jury understands the gravity of their decision and that they ultimately are deciding the fate of an individual. But especially in this case, with all the media attention, all the people in the courtroom, and their familiarity with Sean Combs, they're certainly even more attuned to the importance of their decision, and they're going to weigh the evidence and I believe, consider all the evidence and decide the case accordingly.
What do you expect those first minutes of deliberation will be like for a jury, for this jury?
So these are the only 12 people in the world that haven't been able to watch any news about the trial or even speak to each other. So, and after almost 2 months of very emotional testimony, they're going to it's going to be very cathartic. They want to talk about the case, talk about moments in the trial. So before they even start to consider the verdict questions, I feel, based on my experience in talking to jurors after trials, they're going to spend the first 1 or 2 hours just getting everything off their chest before they start to really deliberate and decide each of the charges against Sean Combs.
Now, no cameras were allowed inside the
But how much did they see prior to being a juror? Fair use reaction clip. Press 3 if you knew where you're watching from. Press 3 if you knew where you're watching from. Press 5 you've been here before, where you're watching from. Thanks for tuning in. What do you think the verdict will be? Guilty, not guilty? Let's get the likes up, you guys. We have 112 in the building. Let's get the likes to 100. Can I get 80 people to double tap the screen to hit the like? 80 people to double tap the screen and hit the like.
Courtroom during this trial, but the national media and even some high-profile people were in that courtroom. Is that something that jurors would typically be impacted by in any way?
Certainly, regardless of the trial, but especially in a case like this, their familiarity with celebrities and they're liking them and having those folks support Sean Combs can certainly impact them. But ultimately, they've heard 2 months of testimony, and I think all that's going to be go into the background when they speak to each other, and ultimately look at the evidence that they heard in the 2 months. Consider what the prosecution and defense, how they wrapped up the case in terms of their closing arguments, and you really deliberate and decide the case. And I think all that will not be as important once they start to deliberate.
The gravity of this for this jury, you mentioned that earlier, determining someone's fate. What kind of evidence typically does well with juries? What typically does not?
So jurors do not like circumstantial evidence. They want to see direct proof, especially if the burden is beyond a reasonable doubt, which it is here in any criminal trial. So they want to see the physical evidence, and they also want to see evidence that corroborates other witnesses' testimony. So that's going to be very important in how they weigh the decision. The videos, all the corroborating testimony is going to be very important for their ultimate decisions in this case.
Eric, thank you so much for being with us. We really appreciate your insight.
Sure.
So I had closing arguments in the Sean Diddy Combs trial. The defense trying to convince the jury their client is not a sex trafficker. Were they convincing? Our legal experts weigh in.
And is that a situation? Is that what it is? But if you're traveling and paying for, if somebody pulls up in a car and asks for services, how are they trying to make it different? Interesting, y'all. Fair use reaction clip. Fair use reaction clip. They're trying to normalize stuff, and it's just weird to me.
theatrical. Let's break down the strengths and weaknesses of their closing. ABC News legal contributors Brian Buckmeyer and Bernardo Villalona are here. Brian, the defense had some colorful statements today, including, I just want to read a few of them. Boxes of Astroglide, take him off the streets, referring to the lubricant that was found in Combs' garage. And when talking about Cassie Ventura, he said this: she's a woman who actually likes sex. Good for her. She's beautiful. Brian?
Not the way that I would have done it. Stylistically, I think not the best way to do it. But I think for Mark Agnifilo, the way he's coming across is someone that is explaining a case as if he were sitting in a bar. And I think for the important part of this is, what do those 12 people think about it? I did not like it. I know many of us that in the audience didn't like it, especially calling this a modern-day love story. He beat that woman relentlessly. We saw it in a video. That's no love story that I've ever read or known about, but it seemed like in the points that he was making in terms of why certain evidence didn't connect to the crimes, the jurors were engaged. I think they liked his personality. It came off more authentic than what we saw from the government of just reading and telling the elements and walking bit by bit. So yeah, he swung for the fences, missed a lot, but he made some connections in other parts.
Bernardo, I see you furrowing your brow over there. So from the prosecution standpoint, looking at the closing argument of Mark Agnifilo, I mean, he made a joke out of the whole court system. He made a joke out of the whole closing arguments. It was like a complete mockery of the government's case and of the closing. And I think that may backfire on him because literally for the first hour or so, it felt like I was sitting in a comedy show. And that's hard. You know, some cases you can make it, you know, a little bit of laughter, stuff like that. But when you have video of a woman getting beaten, brutally beaten. And when you have text messages that actually corroborate in a sense of the feelings of what these women went through, and where you know when some of the testimony is that escort urinated in Cassie's mouth, and having to have sex or with a UTI or on her period. So there is testimony that is just so gruesome, and for you to make a whole mockery of it, I think it may backfire him. Yes, he did the most that he could in terms of arguing the predicate acts, why it's not predicate acts, and why there's no racketeering conspiracy. But he also lost credibility on another point, which is having to deal with the Mann Act, transportation to engage in prostitution. Because for him to say that Sean Combs was paying for time, quality time, not for sex, I think he lost credibility with that argument, and that may have trickled down to the rest of what he was saying. All right, strengths and weaknesses, Brian, you go first.
I think for the strength, the style in which Mark Agnifilo did, not necessarily the presentation, but the arguments that he makes. I think for him, what I saw is he took a central theme or idea that people might think be universal. One I think that might have worked out well, and I saw some of the jurors really respond well to it, is his allegation of Cassie being raped and the text messages. October. And his argument was that Cassie was with Sean Combs, her then ex, because she's with her now husband, and that while having intercourse with him, the husband called. And he's saying, well, guys, this is a story that we all understand, that because she got caught, she has to make up a lie. She made the biggest of lies, that she was raped. Okay, why would you lie in that sense? I kind of get it. And I think that helped him. But in other aspects where he's talking about this being a modern day love story, or some of the points that Bernardo made up, is like, dude, like,
well, if she said no and he proceeded, that is what it is. Hello? And remember, they're on substances. Let's continue fair use reaction clip.
Where are we going with that? Like, stick to your strengths. Don't waver off.
Bernardo, I have to say, I have to take it back to one of the bail applications where Justice Carter said, what does love got to do with it? You know, that's what played in my head when he was talking about this modern day love story. But also in terms of another, actually a strength of his, aside from doing the predicate acts, I think one, having to deal with the kidnapping, when he told this jury, you come here in the morning and you're not allowed to leave until the end of the day. Do you feel like you're kidnapped? So that's number one. But two, when he blew up a picture of Sean Combs and KK is in it, and a lot of other people, we're talking about over 20 other people that are inside of that photo. And he asked this jury, what's the one thing that comes to your mind when you see this photo? You know, is it joy? Is it happiness? Is it family? Is it business? And he said, the one word that doesn't come up is racketeering conspiracy. The government wants you to think that this photo right here of Sean Combs, KK, and like 20 other people gathered is racketeering conspiracy, and this is not it. So I thought that those were two strengths in the defense closing. The prosecution got to give a rebuttal. Yes. How do you think they did? The prosecution's rebuttal, Maureen Comey came out swinging. She went head on.
Please subscribe, you guys. There's about 120 in the building. Please subscribe to the page. We're trying to hit 39K. Please subscribe and turn on your notification. Let's continue fair use reaction clip.
And I think it was like a head-on collision when she came out, literally because she was so aggressive and so passionate, but she needed to be, because she had to show her disgust for the mockery that Mark Agnifilo made of this entire closing argument and of the case in general. And she hit it point by point, everything that Mark Agnifilo had said, and also re-emphasized to this jury in the sense of, did these women want to have sex with a UTI, with a cold sore, being beaten? And re-emphasized in terms of what is the conspiracy? Who are the people part of this conspiracy?
Good morning. mean?
It's a mockery and defies logic in the sense of, you think that he was paying just to have them for quality time? It's in his own messages when he was texting, Sean Combs was texting the head of Cowboy for.
So are the attorneys okay with how Diddy treats women? So are those attorneys saying they're treating their wives or girlfriends or partners the same way? Stop playing with me. That's weird to me. Fair use reaction clip.
Angels was like, look, here's $1,000 for that bum ass cowboy, like, because he couldn't perform, but yet he still paid $1,000.
And to piggyback off of that, when Mark Nicola was doing his closing argument, AOC Comey was chomping at the bit.
Yes.
You could see her just waiting,
Yes.
rolling her eyes.
Yes.
And even behind that, you saw Sean Combs' leg puttering like this.
Right, and when a defendant is acting like that, you know you're doing a good job as a prosecutor.
People want to send super chats? You can. You want me to engage with you? Super chats are welcome. Super chats are welcome. Memberships are welcome. I'm getting down to the topics. My page, we don't go 10 minutes and we're talking about the same old thing. My page goes fast. So you got to be able to keep up over here. Super chats are welcome. Memberships are welcome. I'm engaging with this news. Fair use reaction clip. You go run your page how you run it. I'll do my thing on my page. Yeah, super chats are welcome. Thank you. Fair use reaction clip. Let's continue. We're getting down to the news. What happened in court? How these attorneys are trying to make it seem like it's normal of how this man acts. Are they saying they treat their wives like that? That's what I would have said from the other attorneys. So you're saying you treat your wife like this. You're saying you want your wife sleeping with other men. You're saying you do that to your wife when she's on her monthly. What? You call men to be with your wife? Stop playing. I would have went in. What? Fair use reaction clip. Let's stay on something that they're trying to normalize. It's not okay to have your girl sleeping with, and then you threaten to put the video out, and then you have her mama paying because she wants to move on. You're trying to get money from the girl's mama because you saying you're going to put the video out, and she's trying to protect her career because it's her in the video, not you. Fair use reaction clip. Real talk.
But I also have to point out that Mark Agnifilo, because of certain statements that he made during his closing argument, the judge had to step in and give a curative instruction to the jury to be like, look, what was said, pretty much is saying, look, what was said was wrong. You are ultimately the judges of the facts, and you're not to determine about this is a targeted prosecution or why specifically they were going after Sean Combs. All right, we're out of time. I know we can talk.
Let's get the likes up, you guys. We got 36 likes. We've been live for an hour. Please double tap the screen and thank you. Yeah, there's been men that went to jail prior to him. Please double tap the screen. If you're watching from a phone, press 1, or a tablet, press 1. Let's get the likes up and thank you. Yes, let's get them likes up. Yes, thank you. Let's get them likes up. Bring y'all to TTT and the news and the information. We don't do clickbait over here. We try and say thank you. Hit the like button and make sure you subscribe. Thank you. Let's get the likes up. Double tap the screen. It's great that YouTube makes it easy. All you have to do is double tap the screen. You don't have to exit out. Just double tap the screen. Press 1 if you're watching from a phone. Double tap the screen. Let's get the likes up. There's about 100 in the building. Let's get the likes to 100. Double tap the screen. And if you already did double tap the screen, thank you. If you already subscribed, thank you. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
About this for a lot longer. Bernard O'Brien, thank you both for being here with us. Coming up, YouTube star Tisa Tells is here to dish about what people are talking.
Oh, no, we're not going there. Nope, no thank you. Nope. I don't listen to certain people. I like the facts and the news, baby. We're not going there. No thank you. No thank you. Many people have been calling certain people out for giving false narratives. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip.
Overflow rooms. There are multiple overflow rooms packed full of people from the public, from the media. So many people converging on New York City because of this trial. And in one of the rooms, I can confirm to you that when Mark Agnifilo finished, the room erupted in cheers. Everyone in the room started cheering loudly, clapping when his closing argument was finished. Mark Agnifilo giving that close on behalf of Diddy's legal team. Numerous lawyers taking part in this process for him, and from what we understand, Diddy was quite pleased with that closing argument. Now we're in the government's rebuttal, so that is currently taking place in the courthouse behind me. Diddy's trial happening at the very top floor of this building. We're in the Southern District of New York, and they actually have two federal courthouses, Michael and Ashley. This is one of them, the larger one. It is beautiful inside, and it is very hard to get a seat in that courtroom.
Yeah, praying for the alleged victims. And you got to remember, he was on substances, they were on substances. And who supplied those substances? Who supplied them? So he had her out there. You know what I mean? Making poor decisions. And then it took her years. And then sometimes we had heard, didn't he go to rehab? Didn't she go to rehab? Some of these people went to rehab because they were, you know, the concerns that they had. This is not a normal situation. He's producer getting people hooked, alleged, on substances and having his girls sleep with other people. Fair use, relaxation clip. And like I said, he's innocent until proven guilty. But we've heard about the messages. We've heard the different testimonies. They've tried to make every person that hit that stand look bad. They tried. But that's their alleged story. Did some of them, you know, perjure themselves? I don't know. That's up to them to decide if some people did not tell the truth. But all in all, this is a concerning situation. We can't act like the assistants, what they had to do, what they had to see. And then some of them would probably be happy that he was off with the women so they could possibly get caught up on sleep. What woman wants to go hours and days? What woman wants to go hours and days? And you got to realize he's having her go hours and days. And then he's spending quality time with the women, putting them to work, bringing in different people to sleep with a person. There's no love there. There's no love there. Hours and days. Most women can't even handle an hour. What? Let's continue. Gross. Very gross. Fair use.
But I will tell you, when I was in there this morning, Diddy looked to be in very good spirits. I saw him looking back at his children right before court started, giving them a big smile. And then during the break, when everybody was in the morning recess, people were milling about.
I feel bad for his kids. Quincy's fashion, baby. Quincy been coming up in there with his blonde hair. His outfits have been, yes. Quincy have been showing up and showing it out. Yes, Quincy looks really nice. I feel bad for his children. Real talk. They have to sit and listen to the entanglements of their father with these women. He has daughters. You got to remember that. He has daughters. So is he going to be okay if men treat his daughters like that? No. And you know it. Yes. Double tap that screen, folks. Double tap that screen. Let's continue. Fair use reaction clip. Yes. But Quincy looks amazing. Yes, he does. And then if you don't know, there's alleged other lawsuits that just came out this week. We'll cover it at some point. But there's so many alleged civil lawsuits that came out after he got locked up. Now this week, there's other civil lawsuits that came out. We'll get to it at some point. Fair use reaction clip.
Courtroom and talking. The judge was off the bench, and I saw one of his twin daughters hand a piece of paper to attorney Tenny Garagos, Mark Garagos' daughter, who's one of the attorneys on the Diddy team. And she then handed that paper to Diddy, and he read whatever was on it, and then he turned back around, looked at his daughter, smiled really big, and did a little bit of a fist pump, like to indicate, yeah, whatever it was, he seemed to be very happy about it. His mom looked to be in good spirits. I saw her leave.
Oh, could you imagine the daughters having to sit in court? You got to pass notes. The only people he can interact and hug is his attorneys. You know, that's sad. Choices were made, and it's sad. He has daughters. He has sons. Yes, double tap that screen, folks. Double tap that screen, folks.
In the courtroom during the break, I said hello to her. She said hello back. They all seem to be really leaning on each other, relying on each other for support, as his freedom, Michael and Ashley, is on the line if he's convicted of that second.
And the twins, RIP to Kim Porter, the twins' mom are not here. Their only living parent is in jail. The young girls have to look to their brothers for assistance, help. These girls just graduated. They graduated. They should be focusing on college, and they're sitting in the courtroom with their dad because they don't know what's going to happen Monday, Tuesday, or Wednesday, or if it carries over to the next week. Fair use reaction clip.
Trafficking charge.
It could be 15 years mandatory minimum. And there are two of them, one pertaining to Cassie, as you know, and one pertaining to Jane. And if he's convicted of the racketeering, could potentially be life.
Julie, I got to say, tell me if I'm wrong. I want to get your opinion on this. It seems to me the overriding theme of this closing argument by the defense was essentially that this was an overreach by the prosecution, that this was about the government going into somebody's bedroom, someone like Sean Diddy Combs, and although it's admittedly a bit of a bizarre sex life, it is his personal life, it didn't extend beyond that. Would you say that's a fair sort of assessment of the way they sort of characterized this approach to the prosecution?
Yes, Michael, you're exactly right. And I have to tell you both, Mark Agnifilo did a brilliant job connecting with the jury on that point. He is very engaging. His prose was much different than the government's. The government, I have to say, while they were very thorough, very polished, very matter of fact, it was a little stiff. He talks to the jury just like he would be talking to someone at the breakfast table, maybe someone in his family. He cracks little jokes, and one of them actually pertained to this point you just raised, Mike.
Cracking jokes, this situation is not funny in regards to allegedly what these women experienced. So you're cracking jokes. It's almost like a dinner table. This situation's not funny. When you really think about it, it's almost like he got the lawyers he needed to get him where he allegedly needs to go. Fair use reaction clip. All alleged. Once the jury makes the decision, it's going to be their decision. But we see messages. We hear what people have said. You know, a lot of us wanted more of his bodyguards, his assistants, in regards to people Diddy work with on a daily basis. It was more the assistants that had to take the stand. But what about people from his corporation? You know, it's interesting how this case was handled. But if they feel that they did a good job, that's on them. If Diddy's lawyers are okay with what they're saying, that's on them. It just seems interesting that, you know, they're choosing to do what they're doing and defending who they're defending and making it trying to be normalized. That in itself, to me, is concerning. Fair use reaction clip.
So he was saying how the federal government essentially invaded Sean Combs' private life and turned his bedroom life into a crime scene. And he joked, and I have to tell you, I saw 3 jurors crack up when he said, thank goodness the federal government got all of that Astroglide off the streets. They went in and they seized all those bottles of Astroglide and baby oil. Thank goodness we are safe from all of that personal lubricant. And 3 jurors, I saw all 3 of them, 2 women, younger black women, and then one, I would say middle-aged white man. All 3 of them cracked up and had big smiles on their face with that joke. And that was just one of the examples where we saw Mark Agnifilo really connecting with them and making this seem kind of ridiculous that the federal government would try to criminalize these desires to have sex involving multiple partners at hotels using baby oil or whatever.
So if a man pulls up in a car and asks a girl to get in and do services, if the police pulls up, those people are going to jail. Hello, let's look at the bigger picture, y'all. Fair use reaction clip. If a man pulls up in a vehicle and a girl gives him services and a police pulls up, they're going to jail. Fair use reaction clip.
They want to use. He described it as Diddy being not the only one making homemade porn, so to speak, that this was just his lifestyle. It was a valid lifestyle, Michael and Ashley, is what the defense team argued very strongly this morning.
And if you would, Julie, remind us, too, how he balanced that with admitting some of the things that Diddy has done that aren't okay by using the video, for instance, and the domestic violence piece.
Sure, Judge, thank you for that. Yes, he acknowledged that Diddy committed terrible acts of domestic violence, and he went so far as to say if he were charged with those crimes, that he would be pleading guilty to them because he did them, and he said from the start of this trial, we've owned that. He did something that surprised me. I have to say, I thought he may kind of stay away from this hotel beating video, maybe just acknowledge it. He actually showed portions of it, Ashley and Michael, but not this portion right here that we're looking at. What he showed everyone was a cell phone in Cassie's hand when she initially left that hotel room. And you have to look really closely. I want you to pay attention to that mirror on the wall. It's going to be coming up on her right, our left, and you'll see the reflection of it. See it there? It looks like it has a white case. Hard to see. And look at Diddy's hands. Nothing in his hands as he goes to Cassie. So Mark Agnifilo used this to say, hey, this was terrible, this was illegal, this was wrong and inexcusable. But it was not about bringing her back to the room to traffic her. Look at his hand now. He's got the phone. He said this was about retrieving that cell phone that she took when she shouldn't have. That's what he said. He said the phone he believes.
He didn't need to grab her and touch her if she had his phone, period. There's a way to handle things. So he's trying to normalize. Why didn't he put his hand out saying, Cassie, give me my phone? That wasn't the action. He grabbed her. He pulled her. He kicked her over a phone. She was trying to leave. She was trying to leave. So maybe she had the evidence of what was happening in that room and he didn't want her to have it. It's not okay to put your hands on someone, period. Who's to say that was her phone, his phone? Either here or there. He could have put his hand out saying, Cassie, why wasn't there a back and forth? Cassie, give me my phone. Cassie, give me my phone. Hand me my phone. And putting your hand out. No, what was his action? He grabbed her. He grabbed her. And it looked like he was trying to make her go back to the room. And remember, that was the week when she was doing her premiere for her movie. Look at how he treated her. She should have been celebrating that week versus what she was dealing with. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Good morning. Is that my original? Is that my girl? It looks like it, but there's a difference here. Is that our Paris? It looks different. Yeah, it has to be because you're the only one that has a wrench. And you're a moderator. It looks different. The title's longer. Is that on purpose? I think that's my Paris. She's the only one that has a wrench. Hey, good morning, Paris. Yeah, he doesn't work that way. He was on substances. He never should have grabbed her. Don't put your hands on. He wouldn't want nobody putting their hands. I'm on one this morning, Paris. Because these attorneys and how they're trying to normalize how he acts, reacts, and what he does, they're trying to normalize stuff. Fair use reaction clip.
Belonged to Diddy, and he believes that was the reason he got so enraged and went after her, and we saw that terrible attack. So that was quite an illuminating portion of the argument, I would say, because we've looked at that video, I don't know how many, dozens and dozens of times, and with her sweatshirt sleeve, unless you're looking at that mirror, it's really hard
delete
to see
it.
what she had in her hand, or even to notice how he retrieved something. So perhaps
I'll put it in timeout. I don't know.
In terms of whether the jury considers it sex trafficking.
Julie, one final thing I wanted to ask.
I timed you out.
During the closing argument by the
I don't know. It's never done that. That's why I said, is that you? Okay, fair use reaction clip.
And that was a point where Mark Niffolo said basically,
it was only a 30-minute timeout, so we're not going to go past 30 minutes. I don't know why I did that. I don't know if you're using a different device than you normally use, but yeah, I timed it out. Fair use reaction clip.
The winner in all this, because she got the $20 million, she talks about it, the real winner of all this is Cassie Ventura. And I kind of took a quick back, I was taken aback by that because of all that went on, looking to get money, we do know some horrible things did in fact happen to her. He even copped to it, said, look, we
thanks for being here, Paris, though.
And the violence in the relationship, yet he called her the one winner. I wonder if you
gotta protect my girl.
The jurors react to that. I thought that might have been a misstep.
Michael, I'm so glad you brought that up. That was quite a moment, and I've got a little more for you both. Wait for this. So when he brought that up, he started with saying that this was not a quest for justice for Cassie, that this was a quest about money. And we all know about the $30 million lawsuit that she filed, which was the catalyst for this case. And Niffolo argued that had it not been for that lawsuit, then we wouldn't have this federal case here and now. And when he noted that Cassie is the winner in all this,
they put a lot of pressure on Cassie to get him caught up in what he's caught up in. They put a lot of pressure on Cassie. There's other things that happen outside of Cassie. He dated other people outside of Cassie. That's what's so interesting. He dated other people outside of Jane Doe. Even though he's paying Jane Doe's rent, he dated other people outside of that. And I think with the raid, they should have been more so focused on what they retrieved. And they're trying to put a lot of stuff on Cassie. Why? You raided their home and then allegedly missed the home. Why? Why? Super chats are welcome, you guys. Super chats are welcome. Memberships are welcome. Let's continue. Fair use. I'm focusing on what they're saying.
He said that Diddy is the loser because he's the one who wound up in jail. And Ashley and Michael, I was a little bit stunned at that because, as you both know, the government cannot mention that he's incarcerated. The judge cannot mention that. We usually don't see defense attorneys mentioning that, but here he did. He took a moment. He gestured toward his client. He said to the jury, do you see that handsome man sitting behind Mr. Combs? That man is a U.S. Marshal, and he said that man is one of the agents who's tasked with taking him to and from.
And more conversation between him and KK. They retrieved a lot of messages from Cassie's phone even. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Thanks for being here. Thanks for being here.
His jail cell every day. When Cassie won, and she's somewhere around the world right now with $30 million, Sean Combs is locked up behind bars. And so that was quite a moment for two reasons. The jury learned that Diddy's incarcerated. They had no idea. Now he sits in the courtroom every day in his sweaters, looking very nice. They never see him brought in or handcuffed. And then two, as you both know, we never heard what the settlement amount was. Seems to me that Mark Agnifilo might have let the cat out of the bag because we know she asked for $30 million, but it was settled for an undisclosed amount. But today he said that she is somewhere around the world $30 million richer.
Fair use reaction clip. A lot going on, y'all. And many people are saying for his attorneys to actually act like what's happening is it's trying to normalize it. That in itself is concerning. Fair use reaction clip. Like the video, like the video. Like the video. Like the video. Like the video. Fair use reaction clip. We're focused on the case. Anyone that wants to send in super chats, thank you. We'll be going live. Let's be very clear. We'll be going live Monday. I have a lot of business to take care of on Monday. We'll be going live on Monday, on Tuesday. If it goes to Wednesday, we'll take care Wednesday. Yeah. But we'll see. We'll see what the juries decide. Big decision. Big week next week. We're definitely going to cover it. Yep, so we're live on a Saturday. Okay, you guys. Copyright disclaimer. Under Section 107 of the Copyright Act of 1976, allowance is made for fair use for purposes such as criticism, comments, news reporting, teaching, scholarships and research. Fair use is use permitted by copyright statute that might otherwise be infringing. All comments are alleged, in our opinion, and for entertainment purposes only. Yeah, there's nothing normal about the case. There's nothing normal about what was presented. There's nothing normal about if they missed a house. Why would you miss a house? Was the house, and see, I'm wondering if the house was allegedly that they allegedly missed. I'm wondering if it's registered to someone else and they couldn't get legal access to that house. I'm wondering, because I don't think they've covered that. And then there's a person that he dated that's MIA that was supposed to testify. Concerning. So it is what it is. It's up to the jury and it's in their hands now. We'll see what happens. Will he get a not guilty or guilty plea? Will he be back with his family on the 4th of July? We'll see. Thank you for being here, Paris. I appreciate you. Everyone say good morning to Paris. I hope everyone has a great weekend. I've been live for an hour and 20 something. Please hit that like button, y'all. There's about 70 people in here. Please hit that like button. And I hope you guys subscribe. I don't want to lose my voice. But I am going to relax, enjoy some great movies, have a great breakfast or lunch. We haven't decided yet. But I appreciate y'all. Interesting how the attorneys are acting. And I'm wondering... They're saying a lot. Go look at my shorts for the last 2 days. How they're saying the juries are reacting to some of the attorneys speaking. Interesting. We'll see what the verdict is. I'm glad certain people in the courtroom are giving us a reaction of him, how he's reacting, and how some of these jurors are acting. Go look at my shorts. Yeah. You said that, not me. So concerning. How the employees were treated, so concerning. How these women were treated, so concerning. And then to think that the lawyers are trying to normalize. And they probably wanted him to speak because some of the other attorneys probably have morals and they didn't want to speak the way he's speaking. Fair use. Everyone, focus on healthy, safe relationships. Be around people that love and support you. Don't be around no jokers that's trying to have you be with different men and allegedly not having protection. And then he gets mad if you want protection. And then the men have to release. And then he want to play in a sloppy seconds. What? Where they do that at? Where they do that at? It is what it is. All right, y'all. Most likely I'll do shorts maybe later on today, busy day, and most likely I'll do shorts on tomorrow, and then Monday probably will go live sometime in the morning or mid-afternoon. So make sure you subscribed, make sure you turn on your notification, so it looks as if we have a lot more returning people coming in and newer people coming in. So I appreciate you all. Have a great weekend, you guys. Be blessed. Goodbye. Thanks, Paris.